You watch 100 Mile Drive, a channel where I teach you to buy the right car. But today I want to talk about why most people end up buying the wrong car after test driving it at the dealership. It doesn't matter if you're shopping for a crossover, sedan, or coupe. By the end of this video, you will know exactly how to pick the right car that'll fit you and your personality. Let's dive in. The first part of the car shopping experience usually starts online, where you do all the research, you check out the features, performance stats, look at the competitors, and I know, some people buy cars because their neighbors or friends have one, or it simply looks too cute. But let's say you are done with all that, and now you are to the final part, which is a test drive at the dealership, and that's where the magic happens. Let's go there. Here we are at the BMW dealership. That's the car I'm shopping for today, and I am ready for a test drive. Let's go. And now we're headed for a dealership test drive. Now in this case, we're sent alone. A lot of dealerships now just take your driver license and they'll let you drive the car alone, but they give you the directions, and it's usually literally like few blocks around the dealership. Well, I'm here in Calabasas, and there's actually a better kind of a route for the dealership test drive. I'm not gonna go through a lot of it, but here's what typically happens. And I'm in the car, this is a BMW, so the first thing you're like, how smooth this car is. And you kind of overall just, get the whole ambience of this car, just kind of touch everything, because this is the car you've been researching online. And the thing that I like to do is, of course, put it in sport mode. This is what people like about BMWs, and you floor it. And you're like, yes, I love this car, because if you're shopping for a car like this, that's one thing it's gonna impress you with, is its acceleration, the engine sound, shift, transmission shift. So that's typically what happens on the test drive. And then maybe, because mostly you're driving in a straight line, very slight turns, maybe here and there you are able to just, take a turn or do a little curve, so you kind of get a little bit of a feel for the steering, maybe, a little bit, yeah. But typically this is what it is. And what are my first impressions? And that's what typically most people say. This car is smooth, I like it, it's fun, I have a big smile on my face, I'm excited, it's a new car, it feels new, it drives new, it is fun, There's a Sport Plus mode in this car. Yes, it's a lot of fun. All right, now let's go and make a deal. All right, with a big smile on my face, I am heading home. I'm leaving the BMW dealership. I'm really happy with my purchase, and I'm heading home. And this is what typically happens next. If you bought the right car, then you'll be happy with it for days, weeks, months to come. But if you bought a wrong car, this is what happens. Literally after a few days, well, sometimes weeks and maybe even months, you start questioning a lot of things. This BMW X3 M40i, I feel it's a bit stiff. The suspension is much stiffer. This is not something I saw on a test drive. What about the seats? The seats are kind of firm. I feel they're firmer on the highway. How would I know on the test drive if we didn't take it on the highway? The steering on the BMW, I honestly not sure if I like the steering. Maybe I should have found a competitor who has a lighter steering. Maybe I should have tried that X330i as well. And finally, why this car is so loud? Maybe I should have looked at X330i instead of X3 M40i. But guess what? You already signed a lease for 3 years, and you're regretting your decision in the first month of car ownership. And this is exactly what I say on my channel. Before you buy a car, sign that contract. Do not settle for that 5-minute test drive around the dealership block. Instead, rent that same car from places like Turo and drive it for at least 100 miles on city streets, highway, and twisty roads to be able to answer the biggest question I'm answering on this channel: how does it feel to drive? And this is why in my dynamic drive reviews, I first take it to the city where I get to mimic a real world day-to-day driving this car. So I get to test acceleration, like a typical distant acceleration, how you would drive it on the street. I get to see the steering. I would go through different, streets and then see how the steering feels like, and I talk about it. So I want to make sure I'm happy with the steering. The other thing I will do is I will test the suspension. So I will go over some bumpy roads to make sure that I get the feel. How does the suspension react? Like, does it glide over the bumps? Is it pretty harsh? Is it that short travel suspension? Is it, longer travel suspension? None of these things you're gonna see in a typical test drive around the dealership block, especially if you're test driving a car where the roads are good and you live, let's say in LA, a different area of the town where the roads are not that perfect. And of course, I get to see the whole comfort, like, is it comfortable driving this car, in day-to-day life? And then I take it to the highway. And then on the highway, I want to be able to merge on ramp. That's what I usually do. And some cars do it very easily. But if you are buying a car that has like a, low power 4-cylinder, you kind of want to experience that on ramp to see how much power you have. But the biggest thing I want to see on the highway, the first thing is a sound insulation. You'll be surprised that a lot of times when you take your car on the highway, it feels completely different. You hear tires more, you hear a lot of road noise, maybe wind noise, depending on what car you buy, especially if it's a crossover or SUV. You're not gonna see, again, any of that on a regular test drive. The other thing I would love to do is basically just feel in the comfort. Like, what does the seat feel like driving it on a highway? What is it like just cruising alone? Like, can I spend hours in this car? Does this car feel comfortable? And you'll be again surprised that some cars don't feel as comfortable on the highway when you spend more time in them. And only when you actually do drive it for miles and miles on the highway, you get that idea that whether this car is comfortable or not. And lastly, I would like to test like mid-range power just a little bit. What is it like overtaking other cars on the freeway? Like, does it have good mid-range power? This again typically applies for the low kind of powered cars, like some low-end Subarus maybe, just to see like, does it feel good? Like, is this something I'm okay with? Most people will be okay with it, but sometimes certain cars you're like, oh no, maybe I should get more powerful car. That's just something to consider. And of course, car like BMW X3 M40i has absolutely no problem with mid-range power. And lastly, I take it to the twisty roads, and you might be wondering why would you do this? In Florida, I don't even have twisty roads. What are you gonna tell me on the twisty roads? Well, here it comes. And lastly, I like to bring a car on the twisty roads. And you might ask, Vasily, I get it, you bringing X3 M40i on the twisty roads, that's cool, but what about RAV4 hybrid? Why would you bring RAV4 hybrid on the twisty roads? Well, have you guys watched maybe some of those videos, car videos from Motor Trend or Top Gear, where they would test a sports car around the track and they talk about all the cool things the car can do? Well, guess what? You can bring a regular car on the twisty roads, and what I call this is listening to an orchestra, because you get to put everything to a little bit more to the stress. Your acceleration, meaning your engine, transmission, how does it react at the mid shifts? Your steering, how does your steering give you the feedback? Most importantly, your chassis. When you corner, like, how does the chassis respond? And speaking of Toyota RAV4, driving Toyota RAV4 on roads like this gives me data. I'm listening to the data and trying to understand what is the philosophy behind this car. If somebody brakes in front of me in the city, will I be able to overtake the car? What is my braking gonna feel like when it's a little bit under stress? And for that, I don't need to drive car aggressively here in twisty roads. In fact, I don't want to drive it very aggressively. I just want to go a little bit faster, but just kind of listen to the data. How does my chassis respond? Does it dance? Is it stable? Is it solid? And I drove Lexus, latest generations of Lexuses, and I talked about how they changed their chassis, how it made those cars much safer. What would it be like if a car would brake in front of you on a highway? You can't fully mimic it, but you will understand the behavior of your car, as this is the place where you're gonna read all that data. This is the place where you're gonna understand your car much better, and you're gonna be a much better, more focused driver by being able to take some corners, see what the car does, do some braking, do some acceleration. You know, if it's an electric car, and I reviewed quite a few electric cars, then you will see how does the how does the weight shift in the car. Like, you'll notice a lot of electric cars are heavy, including the BMW i4, and some of them do fantastic job by using the advantage of a low center of gravity of the battery, but others like Kia EV6 that I mentioned in my review, they have a tendency to shift that weight left to right, and that kind of will give you the impression that if somebody in any kind of dangerous situation, you will have that kind of like a uncomfortable, I would say, motion of the car that you would only know if you were to bring the car on a twisty roads. So this is how it is, guys. This is exactly why I bring these cars. I review them here because I read the data, and after I finish driving it on the city, highway, and twisty roads, that's where I get all the information from the car, and I understand what this car is made of. And I know some of you might say, well, this is too much for the test drive. Well, guess what? You're not buying a car every month, right? You're buying a car once in 3 years, maybe 5 years, 10 years, or in some cases even longer. So why not rent a car for a day and actually spend time with it? What if there was something really obvious that you did not like at all? Well, then you saved yourself from buying a wrong car. So I hope you found value in this video. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, and if you're still not convinced of doing such test drive, well, at least watch my dynamic drive reviews. Let me know what car you want me to review, and I'll do those real world dynamic drive reviews, and I'll catch you in the next video. By the way, do you want to watch my most popular video where I review Tesla Model Y and it has more than 50,000 views? Well, go ahead and watch that video.